According to Brian Windhorst, there is no bidding war for Kevin Durant. The Nets thought there would be a bidding war, and there's not. Not that many people are interested. And now that the Rudy Gobert trade screwed up the market, the idea you have to give up a lot for Kevin Durant, people aren't that interested. It's funny. Look at the top of the NBA right now. Boston, Milwaukee, Phoenix, Golden State. Those are not all-star teams. I know Golden State has some good players, but Draymond's past his prime and Clay was coming off a brutal injury. If talent alone won championships, then Kentucky and John Calipari would have 7, not 1. I think we've been trained to believe more talent always wins. It's the Olympic model, right? The dream team stuff. But what's always been fascinating to me about the dream team stuff, take our Olympic basketball teams. Anytime they face a chemistry-rich, cohesive, well-coached international team in the Olympics with a couple of NBA guys, the games are kind of close. We won the gold by beating France by 5. The game was in doubt with 4 minutes to go. Their best player was Rudy Gobert. They had a good coach. They had chemistry. They had cohesion. If you remember our last Olympic team, our great team, we lost a couple of games early as we were developing cohesion to far less talented teams that didn't have an NBA player. But we've been trained to believe talent wins. It doesn't at Kentucky. Talent wins. Doesn't dominate at the Olympics. They don't beat everybody by 40 points. You think they would with 12 All-Stars. First round exits. People forget this. You bring Kevin Durant into your team, everything changes. He may not like the coach. You have to give up some of your bench. You have to give up your future. Are we forgetting that Brooklyn was really good? Remember when he got to Brooklyn? They had Kenny Atkinson right now with Golden State, up for every single job. Great young coach. Nope, had to get rid of him. Kevin Durant wanted Steve Nash or somebody who had played. And they had a really good bench. They had to give up some of that to get KD. Oh, the chemistry was great. Yeah, we screwed that up because Kevin Durant and Kyrie were going to be this magic elixir. The Brooklyn Nets were going to take over the league. Like, it's this idea that you get Kevin Durant and it doesn't screw things up as well. You have to give up stuff to get him. And now, again, because of the Rudy Gobert deal, you're going to have to give up more. Oh, yeah, KD gets hurt a lot. So when he gets hurt, okay, we can rely on our bench. Oh, we gave it up to get him. Well, we've got good chemistry. No, we're developing it because we had to give up that to get him. So, I like Kevin Durant a lot, but he's needy, and there's a lot, and you have to surrender a lot. And if you look at the top of the NBA, it's not all-star stuff. It's chemistry stuff. Milwaukee's a chemistry play. And Golden State, everybody gets along. Andrew Wiggins fits in. It's a chemistry play. Boston, a lot of people said going into the finals, it was like, well, Boston's better than Golden State, but they didn't have the experience, the cohesion, and the chemistry, or the coach. We don't know if Steve Nash is a great NBA coach. In fact, we know he's not a great NBA coach. We're just wondering if he's a competent NBA coach, and maybe he is, but maybe he's not, and they had one. So this idea that there's going to be this massive bidding war for KD, I think he works in Phoenix, but the reason I think he works in Phoenix is because the Suns don't want their center DeAndre Ayton anyway. So DeAndre Ayton's not great for chemistry, right? Mikal Bridges is, and Booker is, and Chris Paul is, and Monty Williams, and that stuff would all stay, we think. But you give up a bunch of draft picks, DeAndre Ayton, maybe Mikal Bridges. It feels like you mostly are getting rid of one guy you'll miss, but he's not a star, and another guy you don't want anyway. So that's why I think Phoenix works. I think it works. But the basketball culture in America, at every level, is obsessed with talent. Just get me talent. Give you an example. So the trifecta in the NBA that everybody just fawns over is KD, Kyrie, and Harden. Everybody fawns over it. If you take the Steph years out of KD's career and the LeBron years out of Kyrie's career, two real stable, true leaders, KD, Kyrie, and Harden have played 35 years in this league, no titles. That's reality. Because it's about cohesion and coaching and chemistry and bench play. And these guys blow it up. Chris Mannix has talked about the idea that you can make threats, but there's not going to be a big market for KD, and he may just end up remaining in Brooklyn.
Kevin Durant wants out. But the Nets are canvassing the landscape, and they're not finding right now what they're looking to get back in return. And they know that they have leverage. Kevin Durant has 4 years left in his contract. And Kevin Durant is not Ben Simmons. He's not going to show up at training camp and dog it. He's going to show up, and he's going to play at the best level he can play that. So unless the Nets get exactly what they're looking for, which what I've been told has been 2 all-star caliber players and multiple first-round draft picks, their message to teams right now is don't bother giving us 50 cents on the dollar or 75 cents on the dollar.
Again, there's no bidding war for Kevin Durant. Remember when we watched that Michael Jordan documentary, the 10-parter? It was great. Jerry Krause, who has passed away, got a lot of heat for saying Michael didn't win championships. Teams and organizations win championships. He got a lot of pushback for that. But Michael Jordan before Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson, bagel. Michael Jordan after Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson, bagel. And I think there's a strong argument that Michael's the greatest basketball talent in the history of the world. And a big nothing burger without Robin and without Phil. So this idea that Kevin Durant shows up and you don't have to sacrifice things for Kevin Durant. Brooklyn had good chemistry. They had a good bench. They had a good coach. They blew it all up. And right now they're exactly what they were when they were less talented with Kenny Atkinson and more about bench than their starting 5. They're a one-and-done team in the playoffs. Let's go to Rick Bucher. By the way, Bucher's in Vegas, baby, for the Las Vegas Summer League. So I'm gonna touch on this to start. So yeah. I'll get to Chet Holmgren in a second because he went from great to not very good to not playing. Let's start with Paolo Banchero for Duke. Now, we knew going in he had the NBA body. He was the kid that like LeBron, he walks into the league and he's a man physically. What did you make of his game last night?
They got it right, not just because of his body, but because of the way he plays and his demeanor. He had all the swagger of a number 1 pick in the way he played. I'm a little concerned about the motor, which is one of the reasons why he wasn't the foregone conclusion as the number 1 pick. There's a couple times where he could have got out and filled a lane. If he wasn't the show, he wasn't doing a whole lot of extra work. And there were a couple times where he measured his defense. That was a question mark coming out of Duke and all the zone that they played. But there's an added weight that comes with being the number 1 pick. And I think you saw it with both Chet and with Jabari Smith. Like, you can't play through them. You can play through Paolo Banchero, and he's very comfortable being that number 1 pick. So 5 years from now, we may revisit this and say, hey, they didn't take the guy with the greatest potential. But as of right now, the Orlando Magic are going to look like they got it right.
Okay, so Chet Holmgren had a great opener. After that, he looked tired, and then they didn't play him in the third game. What do you make of that? What are you hearing from scouts and people?
Yeah, look, we made way too much of that debut. It was against Taco Fall. And there's a reason that Taco Fall has been, in spite of being 7'6" and 300-some pounds, that he's still looking for a home in the NBA. Chet, through the first 2 games, gave you everything that you would hope to see on both sides of the equation. He confirmed all of the things that scouts, positive and negative, have said about him. The skills are tremendous. The toughness, in spite of being 195 pounds and over 7 feet, was on display. He's a great teammate. But you can physically move him around. And there's still a question of he's sort of an offensive perimeter player and yet has to play defense. Now, he can get down in a stance, and he does that uniquely well for a guy of his size, but he's going to have to protect the rim. And can he protect the rim against the bigger, more talented bodies? That's going to be the question. So he demonstrated why everyone is so intrigued with him. but he also demonstrated why there was no chance he was going to be the number one pick, because the upside and the downside are just too extreme. And especially once Orlando got the pick, the joke going around around NBA circles is that Orlando could not afford to take another long, skinny center with questionable future because of his physicality. So it's a worthwhile gambit for Oklahoma City, but I don't know that it would have been worthwhile for anybody else.
So Brian Windhorst reports today there's not a big market for Kevin Durant, and at this point, I mean, people want him, and I do think Phoenix works, but it mostly works because they don't want DeAndre Ayton, so they'd be giving up a player they don't want. I go back to Brooklyn. They had Kenny Atkinson, an ascending young coach. They had a nice bench, and I kept reading stories about, their chemistry's great. Well, you had to give up all three. This idea, if Kevin Durant went to Phoenix and you only gave up DeAndre Ayton, compete for the championship. You're going to give up your future. You're going to give up your big. You're going to give up a great wing defender. You may have to give up somebody off your bench. And I get it. Like if you look at the top of the NBA right now, Milwaukee and Phoenix and Golden State and Boston, the chemistry, we watched it all in the playoffs. The chemistry is fantastic. So I do get it, Rick. Like, I don't know how much and I love KD. Outside of Phoenix, I don't think Miami works. I've seen all these projected trades. Phoenix is the only one I like.
I like Phoenix. I like potentially Boston, even though I got no indication that Boston is interested. The Clippers are another intriguing situation. Again, haven't heard them involved. We've heard essentially Miami and Phoenix in particular, and obviously they reached out to Minnesota. But this is not on Kevin Durant and his value. This has been caused by Rudy Gobert and the Minnesota Timberwolves, because once you gave up or once they acquired 5 first-round picks, Utah did, for Rudy Gobert, that changed the whole dynamic. If you're giving up 5 first-round picks, of course, Brooklyn is going to say, well, we want Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, and we need to find a package that is bigger than the one that the Minnesota Timberwolves gave up for Rudy Gobert, simply for appearance's sake. Otherwise, it looks like they didn't get enough on the dollar. And I do expect that they're going to get something reasonable. The problem is that once that Gobert trade went down, it reset the market. Now everybody's got to look at it through a different lens. And to your point, has to take that big gulp and say, do we really want to mortgage our future the way the Minnesota Timberwolves did to get Rudy Gobert, even though Kevin Durant and Rudy Gobert are not in the same stratosphere, but he is 33, and how much are we giving up, and where is that going to leave us? So I believe that that's why you haven't seen anything happen to this point.
By the way, there's discussions that LeBron absolutely wants Kyrie and Kyrie wants the Lakers. Is it the best place for Kyrie? We know it's good for LeBron. It's better than Westbrook. Is it good for Kyrie?
You know, I have a friend of mine who says when you're facing issues, he goes, wherever you go, there you are. Like, if you're trying to go someplace else to fix problems that are essentially of your own making, you have to get to fixing your own problems first. And so it's really hard for me to look at Kyrie and say, there's a spot that makes sense, because Kyrie's issues are of his own making. Is he going to go to the Lakers and be any different, be any more available, be any more coachable, be any more connected to his teammates? I mean, he has before, so you would hope that that would be the case. But the expectations and where the bar is set anytime you have Kyrie Irving, the fact of the matter is he hasn't come close to meeting those. He has been, if you look at his record, certainly with the Brooklyn Nets, they've had a losing record every time he's been on the floor.
Yeah.
2 years ago, they had a winning record, but James Harden was an MVP candidate in those games. Without James Harden, he was 10-11. So that ultimately is the issue, is that I don't know that there's the ideal place for Kyrie unless Kyrie decides that he's going to take a different approach to how he plays.
Rick Bucher, good stuff. Joining the Summer League. Love this stuff. Good seeing you again, bud.
My pleasure, Colin.